In this video, I'm going to talk about the differences between epoxy resin and UV resin when you apply it to paper. I'm not going to go into much scientific detail. This is just going to be based upon my experience and preferences. The main difference is that epoxy resin takes more work to prepare, while UV resin is just something you squeeze out of a bottle. So epoxy resin, you have to mix up these parts A and B, and you have to mix it up really well. First, I wanted to show you my process for applying resin on paper. I pour the resin onto each piece, and then I spread it out, and using a torch, I get out the bubbles. This can be pretty much the same thing for UV resin. It's just that you don't leave it to cure, you put it under a UV lamp. Also, the epoxy resin will take about 24 hours to cure. Applying UV resin to a piece of paper felt pretty much the same as using epoxy resin. It goes on smooth, it's easy to spread out, and then you just put it under the lamp for about 3 minutes. This is what one layer of UV resin looks like. Applying multiple layers with UV resin was kind of the same as doing it with epoxy, and it wasn't too hard to spread it out. This is what it looks like with about 2 layers of UV resin. Now I'm going to nitpick over the differences between epoxy resin and UV resin on paper. This piece has about 2 to 3 layers of epoxy resin on it, and it has a nice thick dome that looks like glass. The surface is even, and it feels smooth like glass. It doesn't have any ripples, and it just glides on your finger. The piece with UV resin has 2 layers on it, and it looks good. There's really no problem with how it looks, like if you don't really know, but I feel like there are ripples on the surface, and the texture, when you feel it, it's not so smooth. It kind of feels like melted plastic. The weight of the resin is also lighter. So I prefer to use epoxy resin over UV resin because in the end, the effect is just way more popping and just way more glass-like, and the UV resin is just different. So I just prefer to use epoxy resin. Whichever resin you prefer to use is up to you. They both work and they both get the job done.